You're someone who checks their phone constantly, but somehow you never actually answer it when it rings. There's this specific type of panic that happens in the half second between seeing the name on the screen and deciding to let it go to voicemail. It feels completely irrational. You know exactly who's calling. You might even want to talk to them eventually. Just not right now. Not like this. Not when you're unprepared and they're expecting you to just be ready the moment you pick up. And this isn't just a Gen Z thing anymore. This habit has spread to every age group. Today, 4 out of 10 older adults would rather let a call go to voicemail than pick up. That number was 1 in 10 just 15 years ago. So what changed? You did. We all did. We've now accepted it as a personality trait, like being bad at mornings. You tell people, I'm just not a phone person. And that's technically true, but it's more complicated than that. It's not that you hate talking. You talk all day. You text constantly. You'll even hop on a Zoom for work if you have to. But something about an unexpected ringing phone shuts you down in a way you haven't fully explained to yourself yet. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. Ringing freeze. Have you noticed that the second your phone lights up with an incoming call, you just freeze? Like you've been caught doing something wrong, even though you were literally just sitting there scrolling Instagram? It's wild because your brain doesn't go blank, it goes into overdrive. In about 2 seconds, you're running through every possible scenario. Is this urgent? Is it random? Should I answer? What kind of conversation is this? Do I even have the energy for this? The problem is, you can't tell. You genuinely cannot tell from just a name on a screen. And that uncertainty, that's what gets you. So your brain does the only thing it can. It stalls. It watches the screen until the ringing stops. And every second you wait makes it more obvious that you're watching the phone ring and choosing not to pick up. See, we've gotten so used to controlling when and how we communicate that the idea of someone else initiating contact on their timeline, expecting you to just be ready, it feels like a boundary violation, even though logically you know it's completely normal. You tell yourself you'll call them back when you're in a better headspace. You tell yourself you're protecting your energy, which sounds reasonable, until you realize you've been protecting your energy from basic human connection for months. Text convert. The first thing you do after letting a call go to voicemail is you open your messages. You're checking to see if they texted you first, because somewhere along the way we created this rule in our heads. People should text before calling. They should give us a preview of what they need. They should let us opt in to the conversation instead of just demanding our immediate presence. I noticed this when a friend called me out of nowhere and I genuinely felt annoyed, like actually offended that they didn't give me a heads up. And when I mentioned it to others, they all knew exactly what I meant. We've collectively decided that phone calls without a warning are somehow rude now, even though that's literally what a phone call has always been. When they don't leave a voicemail, it's even worse. Now you're frustrated because you have to text them and ask what they wanted. You're forced into initiating the very conversation you were trying to avoid. So you send that text, "Hey, sorry I missed your call, what's up?" Then you just watch. You watch those 3 dots appear and disappear. You're hoping so desperately that whatever this is can be handled over text, because text gives you time. Time to craft a response. Time to be the edited version of yourself instead of the raw, unfiltered version that shows up in a live talk. The truth is, a lot of us don't want to talk in real time anymore. Real time requires a level of presence and vulnerability that feels exhausting. Texting lets you be there without actually being there. It lets you care without having to fully show up. And that distance has started to feel like safety, when really it's just a way of hiding. The relief of choosing to text is immediate. It's a world you control. You can read your reply 3 times before hitting send, making sure you don't sound too distant or too eager or too annoyed. Then the response comes back. They say, "Can you call me real quick?" Now you're back where you started, except it's worse. You can't pretend you didn't see it. You've already engaged. You think about lying, saying your phone is acting up or you're in a loud place, but you know later isn't going to happen, and they probably know it too. So you just sit there staring at the screen. It's a tiny request that should be simple, but it feels like a trap you walked into by trying to avoid the bigger one. Script rehearsal. Ever catch yourself mentally drafting a phone call before you even dial? Like actually running through the whole conversation in your head? You're figuring out the opening line, anticipating what they might say back, planning your if-then responses, and then you decide not to call at all because you couldn't get this script to feel right. You probably don't even flag this as unusual. You just think, I need to figure out what I want to say first. It sounds reasonable, right? Being prepared is good. But what's really happening is you're trying to eliminate any chance of being caught off guard. You're terrified of saying something awkward, forgetting a detail, or having that moment right at the start. But the thing is, phone calls don't follow scripts. The other person is also just improvising. So you rehearse the rehearsal until you've exhausted yourself before the call even happens. And then you hit a part of the imaginary conversation that doesn't go smoothly, you lose your nerve, and suddenly it's just easier to send a text. Why does one potential awkward pause feel so heavy? Because somewhere along the way, you started treating phone calls like a performance, like there's a correct way to do them, and if you stumble, you failed. And then comes the callback struggle. You think, I can't just call them back without a plan. You try an apology. Sorry I missed your call. But does that make it weird? You try casual. Hey, what's up? But is that too breezy for someone you haven't talked to in weeks? You try direct. You called? No, now you sound annoyed. You're back at square one. No script, no plan, just anxiety about a conversation that shouldn't be this hard. The irony is, the more you try to script it, the more awkward you actually become. Scripted language doesn't flow, it doesn't adapt. People who are good at phones don't have better scripts, they just have more trust. They trust themselves to figure it out in real time. You wish you could just pick up the phone and exist in the conversation, but your brain doesn't work that way anymore. Audio exposure. Have you ever noticed that the second your phone rings, you become hyper-aware of every single sound around you? Suddenly, a phone call doesn't feel like a private conversation. It feels like a public performance. You start spiraling. What if they hear my roommate in the background? What if my dog barks? What if the traffic noise reveals I'm actually not where I said I was? When someone calls, you're not just thinking about the person. You're calculating if your environment is quiet enough, private enough, or cool enough to represent you. If it isn't perfect, answering feels risky. It opens up a layer of exposure you can't control. I've literally walked away from groups of friends just to take a call because I didn't want the person on the phone to hear I was with other people. I didn't want to contradict the "I'm too busy" story I told earlier. It's all about control. We live in a world where we've learned to carefully curate every single piece of information we release. A phone call is dangerous because it leaks the truth. It reveals the context you didn't choose to share. So you let it go to voicemail. You wait until you're in a quiet room where you can text back, where you can control the environment, control the words, and make sure nothing about your real life leaks through. Because in the end, maintaining that control has become more important than actually connecting with the person on the other end. So, at the end of the day, your phone isn't the problem. You can handle calls when you have to, when there's a script, when there's a clear agenda, when you've had time to prepare. But spontaneous, unscripted, vulnerable connection, that's what you've been training yourself to avoid. And every time you let a call go to voicemail and text instead, you're reinforcing that training. If this video made you feel slightly called out right now, make sure you're subscribed because I break down these kinds of behavioral traps every week. Thanks for watching.